if you're there and you can simulate ahead of time how society would react to news about whatever this is, whatever this extraterrestrial, extratempestrial, whatever it may be, phenomenon is, if you could simulate what would happen to a society of 8 billion people around the world if they were given this information, and that simulation showed that there would be catastrophic ontological shock, a complete breakdown in social structure as we know it, potential like war like we've never, all these horrible things.
I was really impressed by the level of awareness they did have relative to most people and relative to what I expected of them in those positions. But you're right.
The bar was low.
The bar was low, yeah. But I was pleasantly surprised, not just because the bar was low, but I was like, wow, they're talking about things that actually do kind of matter. And it's not like they're just trying to get information for the first time. Clearly, some of them read up before asking these questions. And that's the meeting that we just had. They wanted to have a few academics together. It was the guys I published this paper with recently about cryptoterrestrials.
Cryptoterrestrials.
Yeah. And so they came across the paper, they reached out to us, like, hey, can we have this conversation? Because we want to ask informed questions. That's great. That's trying to educate yourself ahead of something where your education can help you and the American public get better information because they took the time to learn about it first. And so that is happening. You know, and Jesse's right, like they can't know everything. And if they did, they could ask better questions. But I think they were doing okay. And hopefully with this one happening right now, they're doing even better because they had more time to think about it and they had access to information in that first hearing that they could then build on going into the second one. But, you know, more whistleblowers helps people that actually were interacting with these things. What I would love to see is them bringing the people that are actually hiding this shit in the first place, the members of the military-industrial complex who have a very good reason to keep this stuff from entering the public sphere, because of how disruptive it might be to their industries and how they're trying to protect their intellectual property and all of these ramifications. Again, that gets into implications, which comes after proving and what are they and what might they be and all of these other things. But, and likely these people would be like Dave Chappelle in that skit from the 2000s, you know, slapping the table, I'll plead the fifth. I'll plead the fifth. They're probably not going to say anything, but those are the people that should be sitting in front of Congress getting grilled right now. Because they're the ones that are hiding all of this. Why are you hiding it? What do you not want us to know?
Yeah, I think it was also Jesse when I was talking with him. He was considering what the intelligence read-in procedure was, and the thing he talked about was compartmentalization. And there was someone else I was talking about this with, but I can't remember who it was. And they said the same thing. And
stovepiping is a huge problem.
Right. So, you know, it'd be one thing if like this entire group, you know, maybe at the top of the Pentagon knew everything and knew all the secrets. But in reality, there's all these little secret teams that meet in skiffs on one topic or two topics or something that comprise, you know, the full thing comprises 10,000 things. And so you could have people who have these small little breadcrumbs where it's like, imagine if you just found a few puzzle pieces on the ground. You can't do anything with it. But if you had the full set of pieces to the puzzle, you could build the puzzle. So what can they even reveal?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the stovepiping is certainly a huge issue regarding the way all of these things are put into different pieces that, you don't see the whole picture. That's the whole reason they do it. But, yeah, that's a great extension of that it goes into trying to get information about it, too, because you're asking somebody that does know something, but it's one small piece.
Guys, if you're still watching this video and you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, please take 2 seconds and go hit it right now. Thank you.
I recently mentioned to this congressperson, their chief of staff, that I know someone who is a part of that same thing, and they're ready to be a whistleblower. They want to talk about it, but you're right. How much does that contribute? It's another data point, though. It does actually help them see, oh, okay, this is happening here too, and how does it relate to this, and how does it relate to that? But still, you're not going to see the whole picture, and that's what they want. And they've done a fantastic job of keeping it that way. And yeah, kudos to them. It's impressive.
How'd that person get in touch with you?
Showed up at my office, actually. Yeah.
Why'd they pick you?
I asked them that question too. A few metaphysical reasons and a few physical reasons. But they wanted to talk to somebody about it, recognized that I would take them seriously. I would listen. I would understand, and I also might know people I could put them in touch with who could help them in what they were trying to do. And that's exactly what happened. Put them in touch with Leslie Kane, Jesse, had a conversation with this individual and a few others as well. Because, that a lot of us have a sense that something needs to happen. And I think the more we can just talk about it and try to get those pieces on the table, because you're right, if you only have a couple, it's not going to be a very clear picture, but the more pieces that are there, then you can start to do it. Not to belabor the puzzle thing, but I've been doing a lot of puzzles lately with my daughter. Apparently it's on the mind. But you said it first, though.
I did say it first.
All right.
It's a good. I mean that because that's how I look at it. It's like imagine if you only had a couple, it doesn't do anything for you, because to extrapolate that, those couple could be these major league secrets, like these things are like holy shit, but then if it doesn't have context, you can't take action on it, or you can't explain why necessarily. It gets a little meta when you're talking about that, but that's the truth.
Yeah, it is, and this whole phenomenon's pretty meta anyway. So
yes.
and it's really just having it, but they're keeping us from having it. They gutted the Schumer amendment. There's just so many things, and that in itself, should be evidence that there's something happening. And I think it is for a lot of people, but they're also still just keeping this process from moving forward. And I get it, and I also just don't give a shit about it because I think it's one tiny piece of something much, much bigger. To me, the most important thing is that this is entering the public zeitgeist, and we're paying attention, and we're looking at what's at the end of that stick. We're seeing a carrot, and we're moving toward it.
This is also where it gets really, feels like it's stuck between a shit and a fart sometimes, because on the one hand...
It's a shart.
Yeah.
We have a word for that.
I say when it goes one way or the other, period. No middle ground. But, on the one hand, it's like, if your intelligence, and let's say, just for the sake of argument here, you're one of the people who's read in on all of it, okay? If that even exists. If you're there and you can simulate ahead of time how society would react to news about whatever this is, whatever this extraterrestrial, extratempestrial, whatever it may be, phenomenon is. If you could simulate what would happen to a society of 8 billion people around the world if they were given this information, and that simulation showed that there would be catastrophic ontological shock, a complete breakdown in social structure as we know it, potential like war like we've never, all these horrible things. You might be, in that case, you very well would be in a position where, if that were true, keeping it a secret or not telling people on everything would actually be in the best interest of people. The paradox, or the catch-22 to that, if you will, though, is who the fuck are you to decide that? And I don't want to sit here and suddenly be like, yeah, let's just trust the people in intelligence because they'll never lead us astray. But what if on this issue, if that were the case, what if they're right to do that?
Yeah, and then you add the component too, because another big thing we need to start doing is bring in the experiencer testimony. These are the people that have had the closest encounters. They have arguably the most, it's hard to put a word to it, but they have information that's not really being talked about or considered right now. But if you do bring in that element of it, where one of the most common things is a sense that something's coming, some sort of transformational shift, some sort of cataclysm, whether it be societal or physical. And how does that relate to this? And how does that relate to that question you just asked? Whether we all have a right to know, or would it be too disruptive if we did know? Like if there is some shitstorm coming and there's going to be a massive loss of life, whether it be nuclear war or an asteroid or something, would you want to know? You know, would you make, but would we stop going to work every day in a shit job we don't like, and we go home and hug our kids, or, you know, travel to the other side of the world, if, assuming you could still get on a plane and travel, because those people would probably be doing the same thing. So it would be sort of a collapse of society, but you might look at life differently and enjoy it differently and make different decisions. Um, or, you know, we just don't know and we live in ignorant bliss. And then a thing comes and we still transform, we still change, but in a different way. I'm not saying that's why they decided not to tell us, because there was Hal Puthoff mentioned, I think at the Soul Conference recently, that he was a part of a group of people that were brought in to do that exact thing, that they were meeting to discuss whether we should talk about what is actually happening or continue to keep it quiet. And a lot of them, from what he said, were pro disclosure. And by the end, unanimously, they were like, nope, shouldn't do it. Not worth it. So what is it? Like,
When did
what
he
is
say
it?
that was?
I think I just saw the video. I wasn't at the Soul Conference, but I think it was at the Soul Conference like a year ago now-ish, because the other one's coming up pretty
Yeah,
soon.
but when did he say those meetings took place?
I don't know that. I can't answer that question. It would probably be easy to find because he probably did mention it in that conversation, but I can't give a specific time. But it's interesting in the context of what you're talking about here. This is an existential question. This is about what we are, who we are, how we understand the universe. We all have a right to know that. But if it's also a matter of maintaining this physical reality and the society that we built, as destructive as it is, and as much as it probably needs a reset of some sort, do we want to do that? Are we capable of doing that as a government entity? And that's probably a big part of why they're afraid too. Could they even manage that? Because it would be on them to do it. If they're the ones that say it, they're the catalyst for that. It's then on them to manage it. And maybe that's a part of what they've been doing in slow motion. Like the buzz about those UFOs that were shot down over the Atlantic, outside North Carolina and Alaska. Like that to me felt like a litmus test, sort of a neurolinguistic programming thing to get people to pay attention to this and to have it on their radar and to normalize it slowly over time, as opposed to just boom, here's the information, here's the UFOs, now you have everything that you need to know. So it seems like they're doing it in a slow motion, like the drip drip of disclosure is sort of the cliche term. But that would make more sense. You get both. You can have both, assuming it's not associated with some massive cataclysm or some huge disruption to our lives. But clearly there's something else there. If it's just these aliens from this planet, they've been coming here. Sorry, they put some stuff in your butt. You know, I hope that didn't jack you up too much, you know, but clearly there's something more than just that, or we would all know already. And that's what interests me, is what is it that they're keeping from us that is likely way more disruptive than just that simple scenario.
That could take, if that is the way they're doing it, though, that could take decades.
They might have a timeline, though, too.
Yeah.
They might be coming up against something that they need us to have an awareness, or at least to have the carrot out there. If we pay attention to it, that's one thing. If we don't, that's a whole nother thing. And that's what I think existence is seeking. It's about seeking something beyond just this conventional physical reality.
That's the problem, though, because the stigma that they weaponize for so long with this is so seeped into society that still the majority of people, even when they see, you know, Lou go on a book tour on CBS, they're like, oh, 5 minutes on UFOs. The average person who's not into this topic and doesn't study it, you know, they don't care. A lot of people don't care.
That's the thing that blew my mind the most about all of these just crazy revelations that have been popping up since, I mean, forever if you pay attention to it, but obviously since 2017 is a real turning point, is just how many people don't give a shit. Yeah. Like, it's arguably one of the biggest questions of our time with so many implications, but there's this rampant complacency. What is that? What's at the root of that? It can't just be the manufactured stigma, because a lot of those people didn't care about that or wouldn't have paid attention to that anyway. There's got to be something more. There's got to be something almost metaphysical associated with it, with the people that pay attention and the people that don't. You know, not that UFOs is the only thing we should be talking about, but I think UFOs is sort of a gateway into other realms of thinking that allow us to answer some more existential questions and to really open the aperture wider.
I think there's something about it with, like you say, complacency, and I think there's truth to that, but also it's so out there, no pun intended,
It is. That's true.
that I think people kind of wake up, and if the thought crosses their mind when they're looking at the sky, it's almost like passively they're like, well, what the fuck am I gonna do about it if that's really a thing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they don't, because they can't see it. They're like, whatever, maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. I'm not gonna sit here and worry about it.
But doesn't it also make it an important portal or potential portal for allowing you to look into different, like Amy Michel, one of Jacques Vallée's mentors, famously said that it starts with studying UFOs, and next thing you know, you're researching Arab mystics. So maybe that UFO is the more tangible thing. You still look up and see it. You might not have the willingness or the desire to research it more, but most people do. Once they see that thing, once they connect with that and realize that their conventional reality now has to include that, it almost does act as a portal, a sort of gateway to get them to go down all of these other roads, to go down into these rabbit holes and to see what's down there. And a lot of things that emerge from that are spiritual growth and a sense of companionship and connectivity with other animals, with other people, with the environment. And maybe that is what they represent in sort of a metaphysical sense. But it takes the physical, it takes seeing that thing or being brought up onto a ship or seeing beings with an evolved consciousness that you can learn from almost instantly just by being in their presence. So I think, yeah, it almost does act as a gateway of sorts if you're willing to accept the reality of what you're seeing. And most people, it takes seeing to believing, and they see it, and then there's believing.
Well, the believing thing also has a bit of a downside too. And you referenced UFO Twitter earlier, and you know how that turns into sometimes. But like, you know, as with everything in our society now, people put their entire meaning behind something, and so it's no different with this. You will
Yeah.
find people who, when they get into the UFO phenomenon and studying it and seeing what it's about, it becomes a full-blown religion. And I think we've passed that point to where you can't even have a conversation with some people that in any way might interfere with what they view as this whole thing being.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's easy to get pigeonholed. There's almost like a mental stovepiping that we've done regarding this phenomenon. And it's easy to go down one rabbit hole and stay there without seeing that it's more of an ants colony where there's all these connected pieces, and it's much bigger than likely what any of us are even capable of understanding. There's some indications that it's really, if it is, so let's just stick with that analogy. If it really is sort of this gateway to opening your aperture to include other things, to broaden your awareness of what reality might be beyond the physical and into the metaphysical of sorts, then yeah, I think, like, what if there is a point where we just butt up against something that is far too disconnected from that? It's too far outside of anything that we can understand with the senses that we have. When you had Danny Sheehan in here recently, he was talking about this same thing. And I share a very similar worldview to him. It was cool to hear him say it in really eloquent terms and much better than I could, given his background, but about this universal consciousness that just divides and iterates and polarizes and becomes all of the things that exist in the physical universe over what seems to us like an infinite period of time. But to understand all of that, there's certainly things we can't because we don't have the physical sense. What he was saying is that we might be evolving a sense that is beyond the five that we're aware of. The sixth sense, that's likely the most primary sense. And that we've built these others on top as we've sort of been forced to evolve in a kind of Donald Hoffman sort of way, forced to evolve to exist in this physical reality. There's likely a connection with this universal consciousness that exists and has always existed that we've gotten away from in this physical form as we walk across the river of forgetting as we're born, that we could seek in trying to assess this UFO question and all of its implications.
Yeah, he kind of blew my mind.
Yeah,
with
that was a
whole
cool
part, too.
conversation.
Because, like, I get, and I'm sure pretty much anyone out there listening who thinks about this at all, can agree with me. It gets almost like stressful thinking about what consciousness is and how real that is, and of course it gets back to what the meaning of it all is and who's involved with that. Is it a god? Is it aliens? Is it a simulation? Is it all the above?
Yeah,
It gets very, very weird. Watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here